I feel like there's this cosmic invitation to learn how to find safety within ourselves in a world where it feels like you are walking more and more on no ground whatsoever. Shadow safety is equivalent to putting on an armor, whereas sovereign safety is equivalent to deepening your roots so that the wind, no matter how hard it blows, it has less and less of a capacity to uproot you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Enheartened. If you're new here, my name is Xavier Dagba, and I'm your host. And if you've been enjoying the episode so far, if you've been enjoying the show, I'm inviting you to like, to subscribe, to leave a review wherever you are tuning in from. That supports the show, and it also helps me bring higher caliber guests to the conversations. Today, we're going to have another solo cast. This is a conversation that is very dear to my heart. It has to do with redefining safety. And I think it's a very pivotal one, especially in a world that sometimes feels like it's going insane. I feel like there is this cosmic invitation to learn how to find safety within ourselves in a world where it feels like you are walking more and more on no ground whatsoever. So it's a little bit of a mind boggling question. What would it look like to build safety within in a world that may sometimes feel more and more unsafe? Where it feels like you're walking on no ground, where it feels like sometimes the uncertainties may even amplify. I think it's really appropriate to explore that. And what we're going to be doing, it is to explore the difference between what I think of as two forms of safety. One is shadow safety, which is a safety that is built from fragmentation. It is a safety that exiles parts of you. It's a safety that is built on self abandonment. And there's another form of safety that I would like to call soul safety. It is a safety that is anchored in your wholeness. It is a safety that is affirming, I will not abandon myself ever again. So, what we're going to do is we're going to define both. And we're going to see real world examples of what that looks like. And then what I'd love to do is also share with you a blueprint, which is a key important part. Not an elusive blueprint, but something that you can begin to work with to actually anchor sovereign safety within yourself, empowered safety. So if you are in any way, shape, or form resonant with any of this, I'm inviting you to buckle up. I think this will be very interesting for you. The first thing is let's dive into shadow safety. What is it? I think whenever we have a situation that feels that we perceive as a threat or a danger, we have this, I want to say, innate ability to repress the parts of us that we perceive as vulnerable or that we perceive as responsible for the presence of the threat. And instead, we express the parts of us that have the capacity to shield us from the perceived pain, to shield us from the danger. So, at the core of shadow safety, it is anchored on fragmentation, meaning you split yourself to create a form of safety. And it doesn't matter if the protective parts that you're expressing sometimes are distorted because for most people, these protective parts can be distorted. Many of our of what we perceive as mental illnesses are basically being hijacked by some of your protective patterns. And that can look like extreme levels of self righteousness that flirt with narcissism. That can look like high levels of defensiveness. That can look like overly expressing aggression or anger to the point where you are, sent to anger management camps. All are protective parts that are given license to shield us from pain can sometimes happen to be very, very distorted. So some people might call it, maladaptive coping mechanisms and things of that nature. But at the core of it, there is an effort to preserve yourself. And the issue with these forms of shadow safety is there's an outsourcing of safety that usually happens there. It's like to a certain degree, there's this unconscious assumption that, oh, I can only relax when the world around me is quiet, certain, predictable, which is not always the case. The assumption at the core of it is I can only relax when all the circumstances around me do not trigger any sense of internal perceived threat or danger. And let me say this, of course, we all need a baseline level at the very least of physical safety, meaning I don't know who will genuinely relax while you are being chased by somebody who is after your skin or who wants to, to cut a piece of you or hurt you physically. I don't know anybody who would relax in that situation unless you are completely disconnected from the capacity to even feel fear, you know? So it's human. It's human to want to default to shadow forms of safety. But I really feel like the cosmic invitation during these times is to evolve beyond that, especially when we are not in situations where our physical safety is endangered. So, what does it look like to begin to look on the other side and to really develop soul safety, if we're going to call it this way? The first thing is the very definition of survival is invited to shift a little bit because shadow safety has a lot to do with the survival of your idea of self, the survival of the ego, the survival of maybe your self concept or self image. But soul safety has to do with, I want to say, the survival of the soul, or the fuller expression of the soul. Soul safety that is based on integration and wholeness is a lot more concerned with making room for the expression of your true nature, even when the circumstances are challenging, even when there is no validation that you're going to receive, even if it might challenge you experiencing belonging, even if it might cause you to experience some humiliation, even if some people might judge you, even if it might cause some internal inner death of an older identity. Soul safety is full devotion to wholeness and to soul. And there are some key distinctions that are important to embrace soul safety. And I'm gonna draw a few parallels as I keep expanding on these things. The first thing about shadow safety is in when we default to shadow safety, there is a profound aversion to pain that we all have. There is a profound aversion to accepting an uncomfortable reality that causes us to default to shadow safety. And shadow safety, when it's actually really sustained, it creates a profound sense of suffering. I'm going to take an example here. Let's suppose that you are living in a situation where you've felt unseen your entire life by people you care about. In this situation, it might be a parent or a caregiver. So you built an identity around trying to demonstrate your worth. Let's say to a parent. In this situation, it might be your dad. So you built an identity of wanting to prove him that you have worth, that you're invaluable. You went out there, you started chasing and chasing and chasing. And all of that was done from a place of trying not to be with the part of you that feels tremendous insecurity, low self-worth because you weren't able or because you never had the blessing, if I'm going to put it this way, to receive the approval, the validation that you craved from your dad. So inside, there's this deep fleeing from the core of the pain, from the core of the shame, from the core of, I want to say, the energetics of low self worth. And in an effort not to be with that, you've either strived so hard to repress it and to achieve. And then there are some situations where when you don't feel so proud of yourself, you try to tune that part of yourself out. You might default to any form of numbing that is available so that you don't feel that, so that you don't experience that. And you might also default to any form of self inflation of who you are to appear bigger than what you feel internally. And all of these adaptations are, again, just giving you a shallow form of safety. Actually, shadow safety is really shallow. It lacks ground, it is not rooted. If I were to give an analogy, shadow safety is equivalent to putting on an armor, whereas sovereign safety is equivalent to deepening your roots so that the wind, no matter how hard it blows, it has less and less of a capacity to uproot you. So that's just an example. So, what I would love to do right now is I'm going to share with you more and more attributes of sovereign safety and what it really looks like to build it. The first thing that is important to keep in mind is sovereign safety completely refuses to abandon your essence. It completely refuses to abandon your essence. Because the trade-off of shadow safety is in order to maintain it, you must exile parts of yourself. You lose your ability to be fully present with your whole experience, whether it's joyful or painful. You can't be fully in your power. You can't be fully in your radiance. And shadow safety will close your heart, whereas soul safety is basically saying, I will make sure that through this experience, I will keep my heart open. That's the first attribute of soul safety. Can I keep my heart open in the experience? As hard as it is, can I do the best I can to keep my heart open? Can I do the best I can to meet myself with love? There is a big distinction between control and capacity. Shadow safety is based off of control, attempting to control everything, to have everything behave as you expect. And it makes sense. By the way, I'm not here attempting to shame shadow safety. God knows I have my own ways. I express it at times. But soul safety focuses on building capacity. And it basically says no matter what rises, no matter what arises, I have the ability to stay present and to respond with my whole heart. With my whole heart. Control is brittle. It is brittle. It breaks. Capacity is flexible. And that's the key distinction there. So, shadow safety is born from inflexibility, and sovereign safety comes from actually being very much flexible. Sh- Soul safety honors a key attribute of your nervous system. It is the neuroplasticity. What I mean by that is your nervous system has this capacity to shift and to increase in terms of capacity. But that capacity to shift and increase will only be accessible if you are able to now expose yourself in a way that feels tolerable to what has been challenging. Without that ability, you think about it as a muscle to a certain degree. It's like you you extend the capacity of the muscle to lift heavier weight with exposure to heavy shit. And as I'm saying that, I'm not saying go out of your way to, to deliberately seek situations that feel completely, you know, um, overwhelming to your nervous system. We don't need to seek these situations. Life is an instrument of evolution. It will bring your way things, people, situations that will invite you to expand. Anyways, you don't need to look for them. They happen, they unfold. That again is the main purpose of this world. It is to expose you over and over again to the holy friction that allows you to evolve, which is the reason why it's first designed. It is not to be your safe place. And even accepting that to a certain degree can be liberating because many people are refusing to fully accept that. And I truly empathize with the desire to make the world a better place. Yes, that's why we're here. That's the reason why I even care about making such a video. I it's so embedded within me to want to leave this place better than I found it. So yes, of course, it's necessary to work on making the world a better place. And at the same time, there is also the necessity to acknowledge that the world is not supposed to feel safe. This is so hard to even listen to and to be with. I usually get so much pushback when I say this. But the more we reject the reality of the environment we live inside of, the more we create suffering. The more we reject that reality, the more it just feels unsafe internally. So, the other thing that I want to add around the building soul safety, there is a necessity to train the nervous system to stay with the full spectrum of emotion, the full spectrum of situations, to stay with the full spectrum of sensations inside of your body. And the more we are able to do that, the more it expands our tolerance for uncertainty, the more it expands our tolerance for situations that are, quote unquote, unsafe as well. Because the shadow protectors that we have, they don't need to be exiled so that you can reclaim soul safety. Let's say your anger, your defensiveness, and all of these different things. The whole point is not so that you shut them down to reclaim soul safety. That's not really the point. They need to be evolved. They need to be evolved. They need to be met with a new kind of inner leadership. The fear as well, it doesn't need to be exiled or repressed. It needs to be met with a new quality of compassion within yourself, but also a new quality of self leadership. I often think about it as a holy defiance, which is saying to yourself, I will not allow this fear to cause me to shut down my heart, dim my light, abandon myself in any way, shape, or form. And when we are willing to make that sacred vow within ourselves, then we can begin to build sovereign safety. That's a really potent foundation. So, what does it look like? If I were to just resume things to a certain degree and give you some form of parallel between shadow safety and soul safety, what would it look like? Soul safety is rooted in integration. Shadow safety, fragmentation. Soul safety is built on inner resourcefulness. And shadow safety is dependent on control and external and external situations. That's what shadow safety is built on. Again, shadow safety relies on repression and suppression of the self, of the soul, of the joy, of the radiance, of the pain. Soul safety relies on the expression of self, whether it's challenging or joyful, a full expression. And shadow safety has a fear of exposure, a fear of rejection, a fear of fear itself, a fear of humiliation, a fear of alienation. Whereas soul safety has a fuller openness to vulnerability. And that's challenging. It's freaking hard, especially in the situations where we feel, the most unsafe, or in the situations where we feel like our values are threatened. We can become feral. Now, another thing, shadow safety, it's anchored on dissociation from sensations. We literally want to emerge from the body. There is a reason why in some situations of intense pain, people completely pass out. That's basically the person saying, I cannot be with the full spectrum of intensity that is here. That's complete dissociation. And soul safety is anchored on embodiment of sensations. Shadow safety is basically safety through hiding, and soul safety is safety through presence. So if you really want to see the kind of parallel, that's what I would love to offer. And the I would love to lean into maybe some real life examples of what shadow safety would look like compared to soul safety. One example would be um, public speaking. Just imagine that you're about to share your art, your truth with the world, and shadow safety might hold it back. You'll want to perfect it until it feels fully bulletproof. Shadow safety is basically attempting to bubble wrap the world around you so that there is no accident. But because of that as well, you build no strength. And soul safety says, hey, I am safe because I am true. I do not need guarantees to express what lives inside of me. I think soul safety is the intersection where safety meets power. It's the intersection where safety meets maybe a little bit of holy defiance, holy recklessness. It's that place where somebody is willing to boldly say, I am here, I am imperfect, I am also scared, but I'm fucking here. I'm freaking here. And every single part of me is worthy of being here. There is a firm rootedness in soul safety, and soul safety can break apart with a with a spine. It's almost like a paradox. It can grieve with an open heart. So, in the example of like public speaking, you may procrastinate. You may even alienate the essence of what you're about to share to adapt to what you perceive the audience may want to receive. But in soul safety, you tell yourself, hey, what I truly have to share might not necessarily be what they expect, and that is okay. I will honor what is true in the best of my ability, and I will let them have their own response, and I will hold myself through my response to their response. I will not exile any piece of me. There is real intimacy with pain in building soul safety or sovereign safety. I want to share. I want to share with you a few potent steps that you can take to begin to embody within yourself what soul safety truly is. The first thing is to build the capacity over the desire to control. That's the first thing. And what it looks like, I often like to tell people to build deeper safety within yourself, it is important to learn how to microdose. situations that feel challenging and unsafe. And I think that is the most powerful and healing form of microdosing. And this is not coming from, let's say, a self destructive, like purposefully inducing stress within yourself. It's literally practicing, you know, go, you, putting in reps when you go to the gym, microdosing situations that feel challenging can totally shift your self esteem, your self trust. It can tremendously increase the bravery you feel to deal with things that are challenging. And that's a key important part. It's a key important part. And it will demand that you practice staying present in real time with emotions. And I'll often like to tell people, practice being present with the challenging emotions and practice not assigning a meaning to it for as long as you can. There's a difference between being with the raw nature of your anger and frustration and adding a meaning to it, which is assigning blame to somebody or to yourself. There's a big difference between being with the raw essence of shame and adding on top of it narratives that are just breaking or cutting your self worth, your self esteem. There's a big difference with between being with the core essence of grief and now adding layers of judgment, adding layers of narratives on top of the grief. And that alone, I often tell people set a timer, set a 1 minute timer, set a minute and a half, 90 seconds. There are some studies that show that some emotional states that are really challenging, and that is provided that you don't add onto them, provided that you don't add wood to the fire or kerosene to the fire, that in average, the intensity will last around 90 seconds, a minute and a half. If you really give yourself permission to be with the raw nature of the emotional intensity without adding meaning to it and doing the best you can to remain connected to your body, that can make a great difference because it signals to your nervous system, I can survive this. And that is one of the key, most important things you can do. I can survive this. And again, there are some situations where you will need to be held as you go through this. There are some situations where you will need to be, to have a trusted um, fellow traveler guide with you as you go through this. But if you already practice microdosing what is challenging without suppressing, without running away from it, it can have a tremendous impact on your capacity to be present, to be open hearted. It will expand your tolerance for uncertainty, not by force, but by genuine kindness. This is one of the most important forms of self compassion. One of the most important forms of self compassion. Of course, it's not coddling yourself, it is staying in touch with what is real and expanding your capacity to be with what is real. And in times, you will feel more and more able to invite soul in the equation. It is a different layer of trust that happens when you are able to stay rooted, not just rooted in your body, not just present, but also to invite soul and spirit there, to understand that there is a higher purpose behind or above what you are currently experiencing. And the only way to do that is by choosing to no longer alienate yourself. Other practices like consciously breathing, but breathing not as a way to escape your body, but as a way to stay in touch with your cells, with your heart. Because you can use breathing for multiple purposes. You can breathe in a pattern that causes you to basically dissociate to a certain degree. Or you can build with the deliberate intention to be more in touch with your body. And that has one of the most powerful benefits in your capacity to remain integrated and not to fragment, grounding yourself as best as you can, even naming the sensations that emerge in your body as you stay in touch with what is real. That increases your capacity to basically experience soul safety. And I think that's a key thing. And why? Why is it so important for you to do that? I think for all of us to do that is the more you can feel safety within yourself, the less you show up the less you're reactive, the easier you are to be around. The more you become a space that people want to, I don't know, share, to be around, the easier you are to love. The more I feel at peace within myself, I'm a dad of three, and my oldest is six. The more I feel safe within myself, and the more I am able to weather my own inner storms and to meet them with an open heart, it has a big difference in the energy that I bring to my family. It's huge. It goes beyond you. And I really think that in order to build a safer world, it demands that we build sovereign safety. Basically a form of safety that is not afraid of pain, fear of pain are the main things that prevent us from experiencing soul safety, which is the foundation upon which our soul will thrive. So, the more you cultivate that soul safety, the more you trust your capacity to stay, the more you trust your devotion to truth, the more you trust that your soul's worth is not up for negotiation, the more you trust that you can not abandon that essence even when the world feels unsafe. And that's really it. That's really the key point. So here's something that I want to offer to you, and I'm inviting you to work with this in the best of your ability. To ask yourself, where have I been trading wholeness for false safety? What are the parts of you that you've exiled in the name of protection? And another question is, how can you choose wholeness over hiding today? What does it look like for you? I'm inviting you to think about that, to explore that. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I'm inviting you to again like, subscribe, leave us a review, share it with a friend. And I'm curious, how are these concepts sitting with you between shadow safety and soul safety, or shadow safety and sovereign safety? This is something that I've been more and more writing about in a piece that will come out soon. That I've been writing about that, building more templates around it, so that you can begin to work with that and liberate yourself even more. This is Enheartened. Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning into the conversation. It's an ultimate pleasure, and I'll see you soon.